Hello and welcome to episode 8 of my Kerbal Space Program Realistic NASA series. This is finishing off the Minmus orbital mission from the previous video. I was ditching a transfer stage there, I believe. Or no, I'd already ditched it. I don't know what that was about. But the crew starts their scientific observations of the surveyable area. This time bringing sophisticated electronics, which is just a fancy way of saying the ScanSat biome map, so they can better plot their EVA observations. And the whole point of this was I set them in a polar orbit, and so as Minmus turns underneath me, it pretty much guaranteed that any given biome would pass underneath their vessel, so I could do the low orbit EVA observation. This took a really long time. The majority of it got cut out just because it's a lot of clicking and running outside the pod, then jumping back in. Not really riveting stuff when you get down to it. I'd forgotten to get my high orbit EVA observation on the way in, so I had to catch it on the way out. But that complete, I planned out a return voyage, did my burn from the IVA view using the very impressive displays available to me from Raster Prop Monitor. Stopped to do the high orbit observation, hop back inside, and cruise on home. So yeah, this mission really wasn't a whole lot to watch. It's just your typical orbital fly around. I was really in a hurry to get through it because it's not all that interesting, but it was actually my most science-rich mission, I guess you would call it. I ended up getting about 504 science off this one mission, which really gave me the kick in the teeth I needed to get over and start developing my Apollo program. Bringing Verily, Billy Bobdis, and Shepney Kerman back from a successful Minmus observation mission. And this is your safe shoot PSA warning. Do not time accelerate on the way down when you get near the planet, otherwise you will crash. But that allowed me to open up large control, which gave me my Mark II lander can, and I eventually went with large electrics for the extendable solar panels. In between, I did upgrade and add Interstellar because there are some science experiments I wanted that I will be showcasing in the next video. But the main attraction for this video is this behemoth right here, the pride of the Kerbal Space Program up to this point, their Saturn V analog. Yes, Jeb oversaw most parts of its design and construction. The very first design revision was basically a cocktail napkin with 5 mainsails written on it in crayon. The engineers took this and ran with it and produced the monstrosity you see before you. It's got way too much thrust to weight ratio to just go full throttle off the launch. And in fact, I kind of jacked this. It's all my fault. I wouldn't dare blame my Kerbal crew for my mistakes, but my ascent was way too steep, which made for a very inefficient circularization burn at the top. But I'm very pleased with the performance of it. It is overbuilt. Seems like every time I build this thing, I change the design slightly. But It's a very capable rocket, and with the joint reinforcement changes they've made in 0.235, it's actually, I think I've got a total of maybe 12 struts on the entire thing, which is pretty impressive. First stage cutout, separation, and ignition of the second stage skipper engines. Help to boost the apoaps ever higher. And that's one thing I really love about Kerbal Flight Engineer, is that I'm not dodging back and forth between map and flight view to set up my flights. I still have to do this junk and program a burn into the maneuver node system, but other than that, it's really, I cannot recommend this mod enough. And this is actually a slightly redesigned command and service CSM module, which I'm really hoping to show off in a minute. But long story short, I'm not using the TAC life support container, the really big one. I'm going with universal storage mods. I've finally got things balanced out the way I like, and this was a proof of concept flight mission to check endurance. We finally get circularized and begin our transfer burn. Nothing terribly exciting, but it's got to be done. In this stage, with the burn mostly complete, I start my just a little something I like to do, and I set the periaps down to 0 so that when I eject my transfer stage, it'll be on a collision course with the moon. Once again, a clean orbit is a happy orbit. And now, the moment I've been waiting for anyway, the most intricate maneuver of this mission, which I will hand off to me to a live broadcast of. Okay, now that it has done its job, we're going to ditch our transfer stage, which is usually more fuel than I pack in the transfer stage. I can probably get it along better with a 2-segment tank, but with this empty, there's some extra mass that wasn't asked to move, so. And I may have messed up here. I typically leave that attached. Well, we will do our best. I'm gonna match velocity with our lander here. And then tilt this off to the side. Ditch that. That gave us kind of a bump. Counter thrust it. And I'm going to do this from inside here. And what can allow me to do that There we go. So I'm going to tilt myself towards the lander. Get everything oriented correctly. I'm going to go ahead and switch to docking mode. Just because. I sometimes get myself mixed up using the two-handed approach, and it's been a while since I've done one of these docking operations from inside the command module. There we go. Counter thrust there. Start moving in on it. Up again. With Navy Fish's docking alignment indicator, the raster prop monitor docking camera is really kind of redundant, but I just like using it because it's a neat little piece of code there. The most impressive part about that entire launch was I didn't shear anything off from high dynamic pressures. It's kind of a lumpy looking lander, and that rocket usually has enough power to start tearing parts off through aerodynamic stress. But I'll start braking. 2 meters, 1.7, 1.6, almost there. Gonna disable ASAS and capture. In accordance with newly developed Kerbal Space Program training guidelines, newly hired Kerbonauts Hursky and Dolly Kerman are subjected to the positive G centrifuge before progressing onto a tandem flight with senior test pilot Jebediah Kerman at the helm of a two-seat K-38 Talon trainer. Upon successful approval of their flying capabilities by Jebediah Kerman, the prospective hires are directed to their first solo flight aboard a smaller single-seat K-38 trainer. Unfortunately, there seems to be a slight issue with taking a Kerbonaut from off the street to a centrifuge test, a tandem flight, and then a solo flight, all within about 20 minutes. Having achieved his badge for a safe landing and a 6G acceleration, Hursky Kerman is awarded Jebediah Kerman's favorite ribbon, the collision ribbon. At the same time, Bill and Jebediah have just gotten word that they are indeed going to be the first Kerbals to set foot upon the moon. They're immediately put into a test flight to learn the strange handling characteristics of the prospective Munar Lander. With an asymmetric weight distribution to try and trip up the legendary pilot, they complete their profile landing after much trepidation in Kerbin's much higher gravity well. And at this point, they decide to take some science observations. Yes, apparently I've gone this far without getting the available science around the Kerbal Space Program, or the Kerbal Space Center. Excuse me. Cannot talk tonight. With that complete, we transition back to our intrepid crew for a Munar excursion module flight test. I typically build a 2-stage lander. I might have mentioned that before, but I don't have the parts unlocked for that just yet, but this one does pretty well. It's a nice interim stage. Yeah, I've used a little bit of monoprop. Quick systems check. Landing gear extension. Bring that back. Got everybody back on board. I should have done all this flight testing before I brought my Apple apps up, or my Perry apps. So now I'm going to burn towards the moon. Maybe if I burn radially. Oh, wrong way. But right idea. There we go. Just gonna pitch that off. And I cut out most of the return because it's pretty boring stuff, and I just had a 16-hour day at the shop, so I am just too exhausted to really do much more voiceover. I'm hoping I'll be more awake and active for my next video. Thank you for watching.